It's nice to be here with the Sklar brothers.
Great
How
to
are
be
you
here.
guys?
Good,
Great.
thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Stop it. No. Sorry.
That was my daughter, I'm sorry.
This is beautiful.
Yeah.
Sit.
What are you guys working on at the moment?
We just have a 1 hour stand-up special that we're sort of figuring out where that is going to get placed and done. That's completed, that's done. We have our 2 podcasts, Dumb People Town and View from the Cheap Seats. Dumb People Town is, the world is getting dumber, as we all know, and the only way to fight it is through comedy.
You're
And
making fun of those dumb people.
that's right.
And trying to figure out why dumb people do dumb things.
Right. Understand the psychology of what makes them do what they do. If they're naked in a pool in Florida and pooping, let's
Figure it out.
Let's
figure
figure
out what were the 10 steps that led to that. We do that, and we're doing an audio book for audible.com about traveling and doing comedy. About every city we enter, we try and, when the plane lands on Thursday, we try to write 10 minutes of material about that city, what they're experiencing, what they're going through socially, politically, historically. What are the icons of the city? How can we make comedy about that city in 3 days? Can we write 5 minutes of material?
So you follow us on that whole thing. And so each city, 10 cities, each city's a chapter, and the whole thing will be like a 7-hour audio book. And then we'll take 6 minutes of stand-up from each of the cities that we did and create a
New comedy.
an hour album.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, so that's happening.
How long have you guys been doing this? The funny business?
Doing comedy
Since we were 14 and we're 45 now. So we've been doing it
31 years since we stepped on a stage. I would say we've been doing it consistently and getting paid to do it for 21 years.
In the 21 years, how has it changed? How's the environment changed?
Oh my God. It's changed so much.
It has changed a lot.
It's gone through many different machinations. I mean, it's changed. We've had to be so nimble with what we do and try and figure out what is the best version of what we can do for the time that we're in. I mean,
I'd say in the early 90s, the late 80s, early 90s when we started, there was not really a big alternative comedy movement. Like that didn't come till sort of the early to mid 90s. But when that hit, there was a huge reaction to this sort of expected, staid stand-up that when you go into a club, you see a fat guy on stage.
I can do his act for you.
I can do it.
Cut up my arm and gravy's gonna come out.
Here we go.
Here we go with all those jokes.
And it became one of those things where it just became very predictable. And
it lowered the art form. I think people were like, comedy, it's a brick wall. I can tell you what it's going to be. It's very predictable.
it was on like every cable channel, like A&E had comedy. When A&E has comedy,
Like the only stand-up comedy on A&E is if like a stand-up comedian murdered someone. Like now we got to go luminol the green room and let's
check
go
his bits.
Yeah.
And see if he's got clues in the comedy about who he murdered. All right, so that.
But no, they were doing like Night at the Improv on A&E, and that was at a point where everyone. So it kind of got. And anybody who was on TV could then headline at a club. And suddenly in Iowa, in Des Moines, Iowa, there were 3 clubs. They would convert a Chinese restaurant and be like, there you go, there's a club, and then here's another. 3 clubs means you have to have 3 headliners in Des Moines for a weekend. There weren't enough of those people. Like some people had 15 minutes material that they're stretching to 45. So if you're an audience member and you go see that person because you're like, I saw them on A&E between murder shows. I saw that comedian do his.
You will inevitably be disappointed.
Right. And so almost like expansion baseball, the more players you add, the more teams you add, the overall general level of talent goes down. So the reaction to that was alternative comedy and really smart, great comedians from
Unpredictable.
Bob Odenkirk, David Cross, Janine Garofalo. But those guys were out in L.A.
Doing the Uncabaret, which was a very
unbelievable
show,
like
where you weren't allowed to do your bits. Beth Lapidus created the show, and she was on the back mic, and she would sometimes talk to the comedians as they did their comedy. It was almost like a very early version of live podcasting.
Almost like so someone would come forth with an observation or something that they saw during that day that is funny, the way comedians sort of take observations and do it. And she would say, what's the psychology behind that? And force them to dig deeper into the bit. It was really interesting and fascinating. And then
it was almost like watching comedians write their material on stage. And audiences were so refreshed by that because it wasn't a guy going like, what's the deal with the... And you're like, well, that is... You're not really talking, you're launching into a bit, and then there's this disconnect. Right. So alternative comedy was like, how can we re-plug in the audience with the performer?
And how can we get the performer closer to why he or she is funny in life? Then create that on stage. And like Kathy Griffin was amazing on that show. And so all these people in LA and then in New York, where we were in '94 when we moved from our college experience at Michigan to New York, it was Sarah Silverman, it was John Benjamin, it was Jeff Ross, it was Mark Maron, Sloven and Allen. Like every week would be performing.
Galifianakis.
Yeah, just incredible performers, and you were watching them try. You couldn't come to the stage with something that was predictable. If you did, the audience wouldn't like it and you wouldn't get another shot to do it. So you had to think of something better. The scene pushed you to be more creative, and that's where we kind of jumped in around 95 in that scene, which we were lucky. In a Malcolm Gladwellian sense, we were lucky. We were born at the right place at the right time, in New York at the right place at the right time, because as twins, had we gotten into it 5 years earlier in the late 80s, we would have made our bread and butter on just
doing this sort
predictable
of like
twin stuff.
We got very lucky. And I think in the alternative rooms, there was more of a sense of danger, and you could go places where you couldn't go in a regular comedy club. We're talking about edgier material, we're talking about, harder material to sell to a general audience, because these were downtown performance spaces where people weren't being charged $20 and a 2-drink minimum to get in there. It was $5, and your $5 bought you a drink. So you're already in there. And these are people in the know, and these are people with, downtown New York sensibilities. So you can really push the envelope and go for edgy and at times a little less PC material if it makes a point. And you weren't necessarily, the club wasn't getting complaints from the patrons, because they were just happy to be there and sit there and see Dave Chappelle pop in and do this thing, and Artie Lang, and then Zach, and then UCB make their first live appearance in New York. I mean, things like that. They were so excited to be there, and those guys were really pushing the envelope.
So you mentioned PC material. So political correctness sort of arises somewhere in this point.
Yeah.
How did that affect your world? What do you think of it?
It never really affected us so much, because it's so funny, because we had Keegan-Michael Key on our podcast on Dumb People Town in a recent episode, and he talked about he and Jordan Peele on their show Key and Peele would try and do what Jordan coined the phrase of comedy judo. Take your expectations of something, use those against you to twist, to zag a direction when you think he's going to zig. And that is really, to us, the most fun comedy, is to give something unexpected where they think it's going to be expected. So political correctness can be another tool if you think you're going down one road and then you pull the rug out from under. The thing is, we're thoughtful, conscious people, and I think there are a lot of things that political correctness brings up that we subscribe to, which is treat people with respect and be nice to, your fellow person in a certain way. PC takes it too far a lot of the time and takes all the humor out of life. And sometimes you need to go and make a point that PC won't allow for.
Or like PC will focus on one word and miss the whole point of the joke, which is, I was reading today about how Mel Brooks was saying that, Blazing Saddles could never be made today, which I kind of agree with. I don't think it could be made today, even though it was written by Richard
Tons
Pryor.
of N-bombs dropped, but
Richard
Pryor
Pryor
wrote it.
Right.
So you go watch a Richard Pryor stand-up act from around the time that he wrote that. He's dropping the N-bomb every other word.
And the people of the small town that were insanely racist were the butt of the joke. I mean, they were idiots. They were imbeciles. The smartest guy in the town was the black sheriff, who was brought to the town as a joke. They brought him to the town because they knew he'd be killed. But he triumphs in the end and rallies these idiots around them. It's such an amazing, when you really dig deep and you really connect with what the message of the movie is. But that's the problem with PC a lot of times. I think PC focuses...
You would lose that message because they were trying to make a point about how dumb white people are in this instance right here, and the message would get lost on someone who hears a buzzword and then just jumps in.
Right,
yeah.
you I don't even know what the phrase is. You forget the forest for the trees. Yeah. I mean, in focusing on one tiny thing, you missed the larger point. I would say for us, the only time PC sort of police has kind of affected our comedy is maybe A couple times we've gone up to San Francisco and we've done some material that has worked in other places where we sort of push the envelope and it's fun for us and we're just kind of as free as possible. And then we can feel a little tenseness and
Feel the animals in the room tighten. And you're
feel
like,
the blow, the push.
I'm not saying they're animal people. I'm just saying you feel people look around going.
And we're not saying animals because San Francisco has a
typically
strong gay culture.
Yeah.
That's not why we're saying animals.
What is happening right now?
Why? No, but yes. I mean, I think there are times where in certain cities, where if you push something out there, there's a sense that people focus again on like a word or a phrase.
The danger is if you're doing that to prove a point and you kind of go in another direction. Like, I mean, example, in our current act, we have a whole thing about the wall coming and how it's upsetting us that there's going to be a wall built. It's going to get pushed through, and we're like, what can we do about it? How can we?
Like, we feel hopeless, and if you feel hopeless, we're not going to be able to stop it from happening. But we say, let's
try and have fun with it in some way. Let's build a rock climbing wall on our side.
Obviously, it would have to be on our side because they wouldn't go for it on the other side.
They won't do that. Okay, that right there is a joke, but
it's your kid's birthday party down at the wall.
Right, it's like REI. It'd be amazing. Anyway, but the point is that the idea is that here we are saying a rock climbing wall, obviously on our side. We don't want to help people over the wall. We have to say that in
order to sell the idea.
But it makes us look incredibly insensitive. Our other half of the joke is like that maybe
on the other side of the wall, for 200 yards up to the wall, it should just be the American Ninja Warrior course. Because if you make it through that, you deserve to be an American citizen. Not only
do you deserve to be an American citizen, you should already own your own CrossFit gym. Whatever. I mean, the point is that like it totally circumvents the bullshit of immigration, and at the same time,
even though we established at the beginning, we say we're upset about the wall. We don't want it to come.
Right.
If we say that a rock climbing wall only on our side, do you see like that some people would be like, well, that's insensitive. What are you saying? That like they can't come in here? And we're like, no. We're trying to, it's a joke, and we're trying to
say this would be the only thing we could sell to
the right wing who's going to build this wall anyway, whether we want it or not.
And then we do the other side, we keep the gamesmanship going, and then we give them a way to get into the country, give people a way to get in the country. You're automatic citizen if you make it through the course. Which, by the way, I'm guessing that tons of people would be able to do it, because when you really want something badly,
you will
figure
do it.
Out a way.
Like I bet there are like Mexican families that could do it with like kids on their back,
holding children and their belongings through the American Ninja Warrior course. We're like proud of like one woman. She's like 20 and she used to be a gymnast, and we're all psyched for her. Do it with your kids on your back.
Like an abuelita with like all of their belongings and 3 kids climbing up the wall. It's like
the wall that's like
the moving wall that's like I would pay to see that.
Right? I mean, that'd be amazing. And then they automatically
are a citizen. You
no
can't
question.
stop it.
No
Boom.
question.
You're automatic in. You fuck the dreamer shit.
So
You're
the
in.
joke for us in that is that that's something that we could get past the dumb right, because they would be like, yeah, stick it to them, give them that course. But at the same time, we're saying it would actually be a free pathway into this country because of how badly people want to.
Also, the left would know that we're joking. This is a joke, and they would understand that we're exaggerating to be like, these are
the only solutions we have in a completely
terrible
shitty situation.
What jokes, what bits have gotten you in the most trouble?
Oh man, it's interesting.
What bit? What is the thing? We used to do a bit about these identical twins who, when they were born in Canada, there was a whole book written about them as nature
raised him,
made him, and it was about these twins and twin boys, and one of them, when he was being circumcised, it's not funny. I don't know why. It's horrible.
It's really terrible.
One of them was being circumcised.
Stop laughing. Stop.
One of them, when he was being circumcised, they botched the circumcision and mutilated his genitalia.
Which, as a parent, it was as a parent now with kids,
horrifying and horrible and really
horrible
upsetting
experience. I can only imagine how traumatic it was for the parents.
And so the parents were freaked out, and it was Canada, and they didn't really know what to do. I mean, it's where Rush was born, all right?
Exactly.
So
they probably each of them were probably a case of Labatt's Blue into this whole experience.
And they were like, let's just raise him
as a girl. Well.
No one will know the difference. And so then
The kid did know the difference because he didn't feel comfortable as a girl, and finally
at age 12, they sat him down. They're like, "We're sorry,
we screwed up. You're actually a boy." And then they fashioned a penis out of his inner thigh.
And then this is the point in the thing where like there are actually jokes in this bit.
So we like explained this whole thing, and we said, most people feel really bad for this kid, but the two of us, because we're twins and understand the relationship, we both immediately felt worse for his twin brother.
Because his twin brother can't complain about anything in front of that guy for the rest of his life.
Which part of the simple joy of life is to be able to
complain
complain about
so
little
that
things.
Guy's complaining about how
Ah,
long.
man, the line at the bank was so long.
Oh, was it as long as I had to wait for them to fashion a penis out of my inner thigh? Was it that
obviously
long,
was
or was
not
it
that-
shorter
it
than
was
that? 'Cause
obviously not
Were
that
they out
long.
of pens? Because
Yes,
that's
they
always
were, but-
when you have the chain and then
Yeah.
the pen's not connected. I wouldn't know what that feels like.
that's right.
So we wrote a bit about that, and we did it. And I think it was in Ann Arbor or something, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Someone came up to us afterwards and really was upset with us for making light of that situation. And they laid some hardcore PC stuff on us and said, you're being completely insensitive to the situation. And we argued that we were illuminating the situation, letting people know about it. We spend the first 8-9 minutes, or excuse me, the first 3 minutes of the bit, or 2 minutes, really explaining the story. So everyone doesn't know the story.
You might be able to even adjust that and take that person's note and say, the next time you do the bit, say, here's how fucked up we are. We should feel bad for this guy. Everybody should feel bad. This is how our stupid minds work. Immediately, and I'm ashamed to admit this, immediately we both felt worse for that. So that little adjustment doesn't mess up what we then did.
Yeah, that's taking someone was offended. That's the only person who was offended by that.
The scariest moment not scariest moment, or the bit that we did that we then, we told this joke on Harmontown, and it was in our special, and we took it out. We took it out of our most recent special because we were like, we don't need this flack because it has to do with Trump.
So I said, and this is a true story, based on a true story, I said that my son, Trump is such a bad president, he's making us bad parents.
We have the way we want to parent our children and the way we teach them to be good people. It's our job to make our kids good people. That is our job, okay? That is every parent's job, to send your little person out into the world as a good person. That is what we do.
But this president is so bad.
He's screwing that up. He's screwing that process up with us, and it's making us
the other
mad.
day, my 8-year-old son, was in the car with me, and he was like, "Dad," and I was like, "Wait, you're in here?"
Yeah, because when they're 8, they're just,
When
you
did
don't
you
know.
get in here?
Like, they're
I've
not
done
in a car
5 errands
seat.
and had
Yeah.
no idea he was in. No, I was like, "Yeah," and he's like, "Dad," I'm like, "Yeah." He said, "I want to kill Trump." And without missing a beat, I was like, "It's nice to have goals, honey."
Because what?
Let's make a mood board. Let's figure this out.
This is way more,
we're
way easier to do than a lemonade stand,
Right,
which is just a
it's
pain in the ass. That's
right?
just begging your neighbors for money.
This is like a constructive long-term project we can work on. Obviously, now that's absurd. I'm not condoning killing the president. Actually, even this horrible person, I would never condone that. But to leave it in the special, and it gets laughs, and it always got laughs, but we just felt uncomfortable. I could just see some
It was like we did this whole podcast with Dan Harmon live at Harmontown at Meltdown Comics, and we had said that joke because this is a newer joke that we had, and the producer right afterwards said, "Okay, this is going to go up live in a couple of minutes. Do you want us to pull that joke for you?" And we didn't even think about it because we had been doing it and getting laughs, and we were like,
yeah, maybe pull it.
"Let's pull it."
Pull it. It's not worth it. It is how we feel, and it was a real thing that happened. I didn't make it up, and it was my response to my son. I was being funny in the moment, or also just like
Frustrated
and angry, and I just was like, I know I should say, "Hey, we don't say that."
Yeah.
But I was like, you know what? Yeah, I get it. I feel you.
Is there anything that shouldn't be joked about, just that's categorically off limits?
I think as we get older,
You know what? This is what I'll say.
everything can be joked.
Everything can be joked at. I think this is the problem, okay? We cannot silence people from making jokes. You can think that it's not funny. You can say that's not for me. I think as we get older in this life and you lose parents to cancer and you lose children through miscarriage or through other scenarios, and there's sickness befalls your family and tragedy affects your family, the more life you live, no one lives this life unscathed. certain jokes that you would have laughed at when you were 21 and invincible, you don't laugh at anymore. You don't think it's fun. I can still appreciate that other people can laugh at it, and if it's not for me, then I don't have to listen to it. Like that, to me, to try and shut someone down and say we can't make jokes about that, no.
Like Anthony Jeselnik, unbelievable joke writer.
Love him.
So dark, so edgy, always goes for to the absolute darkest place. I mean, we are humongous fans and friends of his, and I would never tell him, listen, don't go there with this. That's not a good area. I'm like,
jam.
That's your jam. That's what you do.
But if he makes a joke about cancer and 6 months earlier we lost our dad to cancer, then we're not going to find that joke funny in that moment, and we probably won't. I mean, we're comedians, so we could probably appreciate a well-crafted
Always
joke.
appreciate it.
But like,
always.
I think that's what it is. Like you can disagree with something, and you can also think that it's not funny, or you can even think that it's not in great taste. But at the same time, we should never shut anyone down from doing comedy.
Unless you're a Nazi comedian, and unless you yourself haven't proved that you. I mean, that's a different story. Like a professional telling a joke, but if you're like a white supremacist telling a joke about Jews, I'm like, nope.
Well, that was going to be one of my questions later on. Is there a different set of rules for comedians
Yes.
than civilians, than politicians, than...
Yes, totally.
There is a different set of rules. There are a different set of rules for comedians. There is a different set?
I don't know.
It's a set.
So
it
there
is
is
a
a
different
different
set
set.
of rules
Yeah.
for comedians. I think, comedy lives inside of a bubble, I think. Stand-up comedy, at least. People who work really hard in a nightclub setting doing stand-up, it's different. It's just a different... we're all making this agreement that we're stepping into a space where anything can be said, and we're trying to break tensions and create comedy. And to me, nothing's off limits. It's different if a politician is being interviewed and makes that statement, a person, or if a public figure who's respected for this, that, and the other, like they're not in the comedy club setting. They can't
I mean, look, there isn't a blanket statement. That's the other thing. You can't blanket the statement. Like if Bill Cosby went out and did comedy about raping women, I'd be like, no, you can't.
It'd be ballsy.
It would be super edgy and super ballsy, but like...
that circumstance,
no.
That's not...
So there are specific circumstances like, yes, he's a comedian. Yes, this is who he is. Yes, you can't do it. I mean...
If Dennis Miller tried to tell any jokes...
Can't do it.
Just don't do it, man.
Used to be able to.
Used to.
Not anymore.
At this point, just don't.
Does the intent of the joke matter?
I do think the intent of the joke matters. If you're trying to get a laugh or break a tension, or certainly within the stand-up context, if you're trying to break a social stigma or do something like that, then that's one thing. If you are really trying to hurt somebody, then that's... Again, like what Randy said, like the worst thing we can do is apply like blanket sort of policies about humor, the way people don't want to have stereotypes put on certain ethnic groups of people. You can't just say, okay, no jokes about this. Well, what if you have a really smart joke about that? Are we not allowed to do that? Or no jokes about Jews or the Holocaust. Well, maybe you have a really trenchant like observation about the Holocaust that makes people uncomfortable, makes people think about the Holocaust and how horrible it was. Then I think you can do it.
But it has to be taken on a case-by-case basis. Like that's the beauty of comedy. It goes right up to the line, crosses over it a bunch of times, and you have to say to yourself, I don't know. I don't know if that, or, yeah, thank you. Thank you for crossing that line, because regular people wouldn't do that.
Yeah, comedians are like anthropologists. I mean, we do study human behavior, try to make sense of it, and then share our opinions about it. And that's what observational humor is at its core.
You brought up Kathy Griffin earlier. What do you think?
I think Kathy Griffin is one of the funniest people we've ever met. She's the only other comedian that we've written for. So we wrote for her when she did the VH1 Divas down in front of the troops in San Diego. So
she had a very edgy joke that she did in that thing. She was talking about Bristol Palin and called her the white precious, which she knew wasn't going to go over well.
So we wrote a bunch of reactions. This is the day before to like them booing that. So like we knew that was gonna go down, not in a great way, but we also were like, you better go for that. I mean, go for it.
Go for it. She did it in front of 12,000 troops. Wow. I mean, that's balls. And that is like, she went right up to the line. She crossed it. She risked her own. And some people afterwards wrote about her performance and was like, she definitely didn't count on, getting that much heat back. And we were like, no, she did.
She did. I mean,
we wrote like
actually
5 reaction
it's
jokes.
like, oh, you're going to boo at that? And then we wrote like 3 or 4 reaction jokes because we knew it was coming. But you're talking about holding the Trump head.
Holding the Trump head up, the severed Trump head up as part of an art installation.
She's a friend of ours. I mean, first of all, she can do whatever she wants.
I didn't have a problem with it at all.
Yeah, personally, I didn't have a problem with it at all because I know a lot of people feel that way.
And
However,
also, in light of like someone got stabbed in a subway train in Portland, like a real human being, and there was more coverage of the Kathy Griffin.
Like there was more outrage at Kathy Griffin.
The thing that wasn't real than to the guy who went around and was stabbing people because they looked like they were Muslims on a train in Portland and stabbed someone who was trying to save them. So let's get our priorities straight. That was a real thing that happened. This was an art installation thing.
But I would have said to her, if she would have sent it our way, I would have said, look, you can do whatever you want, but it is of my opinion that you probably will get more heat from this than you deserve.
You have to look at all of your ties to things that you do.
So you do the CNN New Year's Eve thing. No one, by the way, does it better than you. You are hilarious. Every time you go after Anderson Cooper in the best possible way. And I would argue that for Anderson Cooper, being kind of roasted by you makes him more human. And it is the most, as much as he looks uncomfortable, he loves it because it shows a side of him that you normally don't get to see on the...
He gets to play the straight man.
Yes!
As a gay man, he gets to
play the straight man. So
for once
bravo for that.
Yeah.
But I said I would say you're gonna lose that job because enough people are gonna call for your head over this thing. And is it worth it to you to post that? It's how we all feel in a lot of ways, many people who can't stand him, but like you just have to understand what it's gonna mean. So similarly, doing comedy in the time of Trump, like if we have to go to and do comedy in Charlotte, North Carolina, or Raleigh, or Dallas, Texas, or Houston, or we travel around. Last year we did Hattiesburg, Mississippi. We did
we just did Tulsa.
Yeah, we did Mobile, Alabama. We just did Tulsa. Those are some red states, those are some red areas, and people who, no matter what Trump has done thus far, will believe him. He's like, I could go down on Fifth Avenue and shoot someone and I'd still have the same amount of support, and he's absolutely right. These people believe him and support him 100% because he's given a voice and a rise to their xenophobia and their racism in a way, and normalized anti-Semitism and all that stuff in a way that has never been done before. So they're like so excited that they have a guy who represents their views about hating people of different sexual orientation and all that other stuff.
And their fear of losing their power.
So for us, we're like, look, we want to dig into that as comedians. We can't take that sitting down. We are standing up. We are fucking stand-up comedians.
Yeah.
We have a voice, and this is the way we feel about that. Sometimes you have to say to yourself, is it worth it for us to go that hard at that at the top of our set and then ruin the set for the rest?
And dig out of that hole. You got to ask yourself, what's the work you want to do tonight? And then you got to look at the crowd, and for our sake, like, look at who came to see us. We know on social media ahead of time, people drive 2-3 hours to come see us because we're in places that we haven't been before and that we probably aren't coming back to very soon. So do you want to create a really intense,
You ask yourself. I mean, maybe you do. And there are some nights that we absolutely do, but then there are other nights you're like, I don't know if this specific moment out of an hour's worth of comedy that doesn't reflect the whole hour, but it is how we're feeling in this moment right now. Is this worth it? And by the way, there are moments where you're like, yeah, it is. It's our moment. It's our stage. It's our thing. Yeah, it's worth it. Why not? And we'll dig ourselves out of whatever hole we create. But then there are other nights where you're like, I don't know. I don't know if we're in Fort Worth, Texas. I don't know if this is the smartest.
Go to the gate that way.
I just don't know if that's the smartest move we could make in terms of crafting our set. You look at your material and you're like, I don't know. I just don't think these people are going to get what we're trying to say here.
And you also just don't want to give if you're a left-leaning person, give the right side argument to have that is irrelevant to the bigger argument. And to me, it's the unfortunate thing that happened when Bill Maher said what he said in that interview. Like, he dropped a phrase that isn't really normal for him to drop. Dropped an N-bomb in this interview that came off of a weird moment from the other guy. It was just a bizarre moment, and he was a comedian.
And it's live TV. If it's not live TV, that gets cut.
Right.
But it's live TV.
But
he prefers to be on the wire. Like
right. So, I mean, it was and he paid a price for it. I mean, he had to apologize for it, which I thought he did a great job. But the only bummer out of that, like, he made a mistake. He admitted, like, yeah, I reached for something that wasn't the right call. In my mind as a comedian, I'm like, that's what he was doing. He kind of lives on the edge, and he reached for something that wasn't very smart.
Especially when you're doing live TV, especially when, because, like, you can do that in a...
If he was in a club and no one was, and it wasn't being broadcast...
But if he's in a club, it might be the Michael Richards scene. You know what I mean? In which case...
Someone's videotape. But Michael Richards kind of kept going for it, and it went too far. This was an offhanded comment that just wasn't the right call in this moment. And the only bummer with that was that it allowed people who disagreed with everything else he said to, like, take shots at him and try to cut down his agenda, when in essence he's spot on everything. On so many other things he's so spot on, if not everything. I actually align with most of what he says, but I think it gave fuel to his opposition's, like, fire, because they're like, yeah, look at him, he slipped up, he made a mistake, or that's who he really is. And then all their people rally behind that, and it just felt that was like an unfortunate piece.
So you have to think about that. Is it worth that, ruining all that I built up over here to make this one comment?
What's the Trump effect on comedy?
I mean, what's crazy is Trump is so bad, and he is such an repugnant human being. He's almost so bad that it's hard to make jokes about him because they're too easy. Like, it's far too easy, but that's where comedians can, and especially comedians that want to take him down, can like craft the best version of the joke that they can, the most personal version of how this guy's making us feel. What is he doing to us right now?
And what is he doing to the country? And I think comedians, in a lot of ways,
those are the people I want to hear from. Like when Osama bin Laden was killed.
Wait, Osama bin Laden was killed?
Yeah, he was killed. When Osama bin Laden was killed, I went straight to Twitter to watch, like, all of our friends who we follow that are comedians make the jokes. I think Jonah Ray had one of the best. He said, R.I.P. Osama bin Laden, now go make God laugh.
Which is what they say when
a comedian dies. I mean, just... Okay, all right. Osama bin Laden was the architect of one of the worst 9/11 tragedies, the worst tragedy on American soil. Someone could look at that and be like, are you joking? That's so disrespectful to all the people who died in 9/11. No, you're pissing on this guy's grave.
And you're making a joke in the moment that's really funny and linking it to something else. Like, we give him credit for that. I think Trump is... You see a lot of comedians doing Trump material, and what's crazy about it is, like, the ball don't lie. Like, if I was sick of it, then I would leave the room. But when I hear someone talking about Trump, I'm curious to hear what they have to say, and I do think that,
especially smart
comedians.
Mark Maron was doing a great bit about it the other night, and in my brain, I'm like, I want to hear what Maron has to say about this. I'm actually really concerned about and want to hear what his view on this whole thing is.
And it's interesting, and we've seen some great material about it, and I think, again, that's born out of, like, a horrible situation, tragedy, which it really is a tragedy that he's our leader. Out of tragedy comes comedy.
Do you think all the political comedy moves the needle at all, or is it preaching to the choir?
Does not move the needle for his supporters. Not at all, not in any way, shape, or form. Like we said, he could kill someone and everyone would be like, that guy was asking for it.
Yeah, it won't move the needle on supporters, but some of the mid-range people who kind of were disillusioned with the left and were just like, I don't like Hillary, so I'm going this way, like, not his hardcore base. I think this humor can connect with them, and does connect with them, and I think it gives voice to a lot of what they're feeling, and I believe that if they're laughing in those moments, whether they know it or not, subconsciously, they're, like, stepping onto the right side of the argument, which is the left side.
Back to blanket statements. Is there such a thing as too soon?
I mean, is there such a thing as too soon? We performed on a show at like the Tuesday after 9/11 at Largo here in LA when it happened. And
It was tense.
it was super tense.
Was it the Tuesday or the Monday?
Maybe the Monday after. I'm sorry, the Monday after it happened. It was really tense. It was really tense, but I mean, we're like, I think we all need to be sitting in this room together and try and laugh. And I remember Karen Kilgariff, who's amazing, does the podcast My Favorite Murder, great writer. She hosted the show, and she went after the coverage of the whole thing in a way that was so smart and so funny, and I was like, that's unbelievable that you're getting laughs about this.
I mean, it's a lot like what John Oliver does.
Yeah, John Oliver is really taken super serious and at times really hard to understand concepts, and then through humor around the outside of it, not really making fun of the issue itself, but everything that spiders off of it, he has figured out a way to sort of make too soon not an issue. Be like, look, it is soon enough to be dealing with this, and now I'm going to make you laugh as we sort of go down and try and navigate these waters. So I think there's a way to do that. I think you can be too soon if the joke is wrong.
Yeah, if the joke is super insensitive and the tragedy is super fresh, then I think it's hard. I mean,
that's just a joke that's not well told.
I mean, we did a joke in our act about the Golden State Warriors being so great. We did this in Dallas, and it got laughs. The Golden State Warriors were...
Why were they so good? We're trying to figure out why they're so good. Well, they're great because we haven't seen this many sharpshooters on the same team
since the Kennedy assassination. All right, so that's the joke. We did.
Few people are like, we're like, is that too soon? They're 60 years away from this thing.
And also, by the way, if you're saying you're mad at
so
that
you
joke,
think there was only one shooter? Like,
so you're mad that we're suggesting that there was a multiple shooter scenario here? We went to the grassy knoll. We experienced it. We saw the view from the book depository. It's a very hard shot. Doesn't make sense.
Why didn't he shoot him when the car was coming right towards him? Like,
I mean,
why
there's
is
a million things. In all of our statement that we made, okay, we didn't once say, thank God the president got shot, or,
he deserved it.
He deserved it. Because you could argue that had he not been killed, and Bobby Kennedy, like, maybe we didn't go into Vietnam. I don't know. Maybe we don't. Maybe we changed the course of the history of this country in a major way. We lost really important people at that time. We're upset about it. Like,
maybe we don't go into Vietnam, and maybe the music sucks in the 70s. I mean, like, again, the course of history, like...
There's a million possibilities, but
it's like just tons of Seals and Croft. You know what I mean? Like...
Yeah.
We may
Disco
never
starts in 71.
Yeah.
I mean, look, but what we have is a situation where we're making a joke about the theory of the assassination, which is, and some people were still upset about it. And that, I mean, too soon. There is no too soon. It's 50 years ago.
Everything we've talked about, how has the internet affected all of these topics? Social media, Twitter.
Social media is really hard because social media becomes like a watchdog in ways where people can record your set of comedy that you're doing on stage, something that would have just happened in a room, and then post it and then have it get picked up and then make it public, and then suddenly sites are picking up and people are picking it up, and then it gets out there, and then suddenly maybe out of context. Maybe, and that discourages comedians to want to work on their material. By the way, you can't just... It's like the old Seinfeld bit about the guy who went on That's Incredible and catches the bullet in his teeth. Great bit. He's like, how does that guy work up to it? Okay, just toss me a few bullets. All right, Larry, this next one's going to be coming a lot faster. Like, there is, you need to be working on it. You got to practice it. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like, you're going to get some things wrong.
Social media also, like that guy, the fat Jewish, that guy who was basically stealing people's jokes, people's Instagram jokes.
The fucking worst. That is as low as it gets.
That to me is worse than any un-PC thing that anyone's ever said. To steal material, to take someone's name off of it and put it out there as if it's your own,
and then become famous and gain followers on the ideas of other people to the point where you're making tons of money and you have a career based on the hard work and thoughts of other people when you haven't done shit.
When a lot of those other people are struggling, are doing their best to try and you aggregated other people's stuff and then you made a lot of money. That is worse than anything anyone could, any joke that, in my opinion, is too soon or insensitive to do that.
So that comes up with social media, and that person and people like the fat Jewish are despicable human beings.
Awful.
Like flat out. That
they need to be called on it, and they need as
I think
much
like
as
they
possible.
should have to overpay all the people that they stole shit from, and say I stole this joke. I'm a thief. I don't have any
when their
ideas.
profile comes up, it should be like thief.
Joke thief. No, I have no original ideas. I only take the great ideas of other people. Like Twitter should force that person to have that profile.
Like a red bar across the top, or Instagram.
Like he should have to wear like an armband
with
just kidding.
Jewish.
See
like
where we're going with this? Anyway, but my point is that like we've taken it too far now. But I mean, whatever. Were you saying it to make a point that is despicable? You know the way that goes. I mean, the other thing about social media is Twitter is a great testing ground for jokes for comedians. They'll put jokes out there in a way of like, okay, this got a ton of feedback, so maybe there's a kernel of an idea in here, and we'll take that, you know, like we'll take that and say, okay.
It's like focus grouping some of your jokes. Like the second you put something out there, if you get like a ton of blowback against it, or you don't get a lot of response, you're like, maybe that wasn't as funny as I thought it was. If you put something out there that just like gets retweeted and liked and tons and tons and tons of
people other comedians you love liking it and whatnot. Okay, now you're like, all right, well, this is like I told a joke in the green room before I was about to go on. We were about to go on stage and it worked, and then we went on stage and did it, and then it worked. So then you can now work that into your act potentially, or not, or it could just be like the extension of your comedy on Twitter or wherever it is, and then that's the way you go to, or Instagram, which is way more visual and whatnot. But you know, it's a great testing ground for that. It can also be taken the wrong way by PC people or other people. Like we experienced that ourselves. I mean, we were performing up in Napa one night, and Jason was already up there with his son and his in-laws, and I was flying up there that day. So I hopped on a plane, I get on the plane, I come back down, we land in Oakland, and I see like our Twitter feed is blown up. And I didn't tweet anything in the hour flight that it took to get up there. And
I was there in San Francisco with my son at the Exploratorium Museum, and I get a little like,
can't get a more like kid-friendly, happy place. And Jay's like,
I look at my phone and I get an alert that says that Tony Stewart, race car driver who had just killed a man
like a couple weeks prior
by aggressively driving close to him when the guy got out of his car. Okay, fine, the guy got out of his car, maybe shouldn't have done that.
But why did every other driver on the track,
less experienced drivers than him, didn't come close,
completely miss him?
Knew how to drive away from the guy. He drove very close to him, dragged him, and killed him. Okay? 2 weeks later, he's racing in another race. And I think that's absurd. And I've said to like multiple people, like, I'm like outraged. I'm with my son, I'm at the Exploratorium, I'm like, I'm upset. So what do? I tweet out there. I'm like, hey, I just noticed that Tony Stewart is racing today. I'm not watching the race. Can someone please let me know when he kills someone? Or whatever joke I did, you know, has he killed anyone yet? Like, that's the joke. Hashtag too soon for him to be racing.
Now, it might have been too soon for us to be joking about him killing someone, but that's not really a joke. It's more about...
My joke and outrage were at the fact that this guy is suddenly back in a car again after he killed someone. Like, maybe you should take like 6 months of anger management courses before he comes back, or apologize, or pay a lot of money to that family, or do a bunch of things that proves that he's like remorseful
trying to work through it
for what he did. And so I forget about it. I'm walking around thinking, my phone starts buzzing. I look down, and someone who follows us is a NASCAR reporter.
And has like 100,000
She has 100,000.
followers.
And she was like, this guy made this comment. Have at him, Redneck Nation, or whoever the hell she was talking to. A bunch of people who clearly weren't informed and couldn't care less who I was, and really only saw me saying a negative thing about Tony Stewart without the full context, without trying to understand what I was saying. They just saw like, oh, you're attacking our boy. And so it became this giant thing where I was like, suddenly, you know,
instead of hanging out with his son at the Exploratorium,
like,
he's like blocking people
I'm like
on
Tembe
Twitter.
Mutombo, just blocking everyone who's coming into the lane, and I'm just block.
And then also responding to a few of them and trying to explain
Yeah,
what...
someone was, you know, if they wrote an intelligent response to me or if they were upset about it, I was like, yeah, That's what I meant. What I meant was it's too soon. They're like, it's too soon for you to make that joke. I'm like,
It's too soon for him to be driving.
Did my joke kill anyone? No.
No.
Could he kill someone?
Yeah,
Maybe.
maybe. We don't know how angry
He already
is.
has. I don't think my joke's killing anyone. If in fact it's alerting a lot of people to the fact this guy's racing again. I should be allowed.
But
to
that
say
was a crazy experience that we couldn't have anticipated happening, but because one person followed us, and then our fans kind of got clapped back at that person and all those people.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely were like, oh, by the way, here's the person who said we're the person who said that thing. So if anyone wants
have fun
Yeah,
shouting this person
welcome
back
You're
down.
welcome to give your opinions to that person for that experience.
So, I mean, it's like, we weren't going to take it sitting down. I mean, I think as comedians as well, we have a very strong sense of justice. This is unjust. We got to talk about this, but in a way that's funny, that if you can make the other side laugh at something you're making a point about that maybe even they don't agree with, then you win.
I mean, you take a look, that's what Chris Rock, you look at Chris Rock's formula for his comedy of some of his most classic bits. I'm going to take a stance on something that is going to make you uncomfortable, and I'm going to spend the next 5 minutes proving to you why I'm right. And within that time, usually you're going to laugh. You might see the point of view differently, but you're going to be entertained and you're going to be engaged with what he said. Bill Burr also is another comedian who likes to do that. He knows his audience. We had Bill Burr on our podcast, and he said, I love to have the audience ready to get up and leave and then pull them back into the show. That's my favorite thing in the world. And I'm like, I get that. I get that from what he does. And it's brilliant. It's brilliant work. It's an artist at work.
Mm-hmm.
I could do this all day, but you guys got to go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
All right.